Hi everyone, it's dark, it's ominous, time for a spooky movie. I'm doing a Robert Zemeckis series on all the films that he has directed. He's got Flight coming out in early November, but I'll be seeing it a week beforehand at the Chicago International Film Festival, so I'll be doing an early review of that film. Very much looking forward to it. In the meantime though, it's time to talk about What Lies Beneath, which came out in the summer of 2000 and stars Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford. Now, the interesting thing about this movie, for those of you who weren't keeping track of movie news and production news back in 1999 or whatever, you may not be aware that What Lies Beneath is actually a sort of a side project for Zemeckis, but an extremely elaborate side project. When he was doing Castaway, he had to shoot the two halves of the movie months apart from each other because since Tom Hanks' character is stuck on a deserted island for several years in the story, he had to be given enough time to get really skinny for the second half of the movie after he's, done without, donuts and steak and French fries for several years. He's a little overweight in the first half, and then he's super, super skinny in the second half. But Zemeckis needed to do something with his crew in between those two halves while Tom Hanks was on his big crash diet. He couldn't just expect them to sit around doing nothing for all those months, and he couldn't he couldn't let them go work on other projects because that could create a potential conflict in the scheduling with the second half of Castaway. So he said, hey, I know what we'll do. We'll shoot a completely separate movie in between the two halves of Castaway, and that was What Lies Beneath. And it worked out great because What Lies Beneath is a fantastic movie, one of my favorite Zemeckis films. The story is Michelle Pfeiffer's the main character. She's a former musician who married a scientist played by Harrison Ford. He's one of the top guys in his field who's doing groundbreaking research. She also has a daughter from a previous marriage who she is just sent off to college, basically. It's her first year at college and out of the house. And since Harrison Ford's character, Norman, is off at the lab doing research for long periods of time, she's sort of alone in this house, this big New England house that used to be her husband's father's when he was still alive. So while she's occupying herself with the garden and housekeeping, things like that, she begins to notice things are rather odd, and she wonders whether or not there might be a ghost in the house. She begins to suspect something's happened to her next door neighbor. The wife has just disappeared all of a sudden after an argument, after which time she was acting really scared for some reason that she couldn't fathom. Plus doors are opening on their own and the bathtub is filling up all by itself, and just strange things are happening. She doesn't know what to do. She thinks it might be a ghost, but then again she just might be having an extreme empty nest episode, as she calls it. She goes to see a therapist who's played by Morton. If you remember him, he played Dyson, the computer scientist in Terminator 2. But mostly she's just kind of on her own. Michelle Pfeiffer is in practically every single scene in this movie. I think maybe there's like 2 scenes that she's not in. Everything else is her. It's focused on her. So as she begins to wonder what's happened to her neighbor and possibly accumulate clues as to a crime that might have occurred, there's this slow building of tension throughout the whole thing. A friend of mine saw this movie and didn't like it all that much because he thought it was slow, there's long pauses and things like that, but this is essential building the tension. There's just long periods of time where she's just sort of standing around or sitting in this empty house with just listening to it and just getting kind of worried and more anxious about what could be around the next corner and being startled. She sees a face in a bathtub of a woman. She freaks out about that. It just sort of builds like that. And at the end, when all hell is breaking loose, it becomes sort of like one of those Brian De Palma climaxes where there's all sorts of elaborate stuff happening. It's sort of a coincidence. A lot of things happen coincidentally, but they have this poetic justice element to them that's sort of par for the course for a De Palma film. Some people were comparing it to Hitchcock, but I think it's more like a Brian De Palma ghost story. Anyways, Zemeckis' directing is really, really great in this. He does a lot of elaborate camera shots that don't call a lot of attention to themselves, but nevertheless are very well choreographed. He does a lot of scenes with conversations captured in one shot. There's a scene where Michelle Pfeiffer's sister comes to visit. A lot of that scene is just a single take. and that's really well done, and just a few shots like that. She and Harrison Ford have a really great rapport in this movie. They really, sell the idea of them being, a couple and very much still in love with each other. They have great chemistry. I like Harrison Ford a lot in this movie too. It's one of my favorite films that he's done. Yeah, it's terrific. Oh, I should mention that Clark Gregg is the writer of the screenplay, and in case you're wondering, Clark Gregg is in fact the same Clark Gregg who plays Agent Coulson in the Avengers and the other Marvel movies. No wonder his head is so big. He's got a huge brain to concoct a great screenplay like this. So I don't want to get too much into the details of what happens in this storyline because the surprises are really important. And if you have the opportunity to see the trailer for this movie, or the trailer for Castaway for that matter, please don't, because those trailers give much too much away about the pictures, so stay away from them. Ooh, another great score from Alan Silvestri, is that right? Did he do the score for this movie? Yes, he did. Another great Alan Silvestri score for Robert Zemeckis' film movie, really awesome. So yeah, terrific movie. Definitely, if you like suspenseful, scary, supernatural stories, whatever, there isn't a lot of blood in this movie, but if you like, the other kind of horror movie, it's definitely a good one. I recommend it highly. So, thanks very much for watching. Today is Friday, so my next video will be on Sunday. It will be on Castaway. So I hope you tune in for that. If you want to do a video response telling me what you think of What Lies Beneath attached to this video, I'll add it to my Zemeckis playlist or any of the other Zemeckis movies that I've done videos for already. The link to the playlist is below, or comment, whatever. Yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye.